Hypothetical situation. You are playing Fallout New Vegas. You have sunk somewhere in the range of 200 hours into the Mojave Wasteland. You know every inch of it, every rock, every NPC that's been complaining about the same thing since 2010.
Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
And you have just noticed, in the fence at the Mojave Outpost, a gap. A small, probably unintentional, almost certainly meaningless gap. Do you A, leave it? You are a normal, healthy adult. You have things to do. The developers put the barrier there for a reason. Or B, dive through it immediately, wander for 90 minutes in a grey void of half-rendered geometry and floating trees, find absolutely nothing, feel weirdly satisfied, and then do it again in the next game you play. If you answered A, good for you, genuinely. Touch grass. This video might not be for you. If you answered B, welcome home. You have a specific kind of problem. And so do I. And it turns out someone called DrB0sch has it worse than either of us. Before we get into it, I do have to address the elephant. I'm not the first person to cover DrB0sch. Sagan Hawks put out a video on this that got 5 million views. 5 million, which is, admittedly, a lot. Sinister Heart also covered it. Great video, 500,000 views, go watch it. And I won't pretend I didn't know about either of them when I decided to make this. But here's the thing. The ARG is finished now, probably. All 20 videos are out, and the story that DrB0sch was telling has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And nobody had that when those videos went up. I do, and I think that changes what you can say about it. Also, if I'm being honest with myself, Fallout New Vegas is my favorite game of all time. And the moment I heard there was a horror ARG set in it, I locked in immediately. I was always making this video, I just needed a good excuse. So, DrB0sch. November 2023. A Reddit post surfaces on r/creepygaming. Title is something like Weird New Fallout New Vegas Channel, Art Project, ARG Mod, not sure. The link goes to a YouTube channel created in May of 2022. And the description is old vids, and the profile picture, an NCR Ranger helmet staring directly at you. 20 videos, titles that are either one word or a string of random characters. The kind of channel that looks, at first glance, like absolutely nothing. Unlisted personal footage uploaded to the wrong place by someone who forgot the privacy settings. The kind of thing that you normally scroll past. But it is not nothing. DrB0sch is a Fallout New Vegas ARG, and it is one of the most carefully constructed pieces of slow burn horror I have ever seen. No jump scares, at least not in the traditional sense.
Did I jump scare you?
No narrator helpfully explaining what everything means, no dramatic twist, and no satisfying resolution. It takes you out past the edge of the map, past the point where the game told you to stop, and then it just keeps going. Deeper and deeper into something that looks like a glitch and feels like a descent into hell, and it earns every single step of the way down. Let's go. The first video is called Fallout New Vegas Outside the Mojave Outpost, and it is, in the most literal sense possible, exactly what it says on the tin. Someone found that the invisible barrier at the Mojave Outpost gate just isn't there. They jumped over the fence and they wandered around for a bit in the nothing beyond the map's edge, did some parkour, shot at some rocks, and gave a shout out to someone called Mark who apparently suggested they record it in the first place. It is aggressively, almost insultingly unimpressive. The aspect ratio is 4:3, the quality is bad. There's text commentary peppered with typos and the occasional LOL. It looks and feels exactly like what the description says it is, old forum footage, made for maybe a dozen people who are never going to watch it anyway, posted to the internet and immediately forgotten about. Nothing happens, nothing is discovered, and nobody finds anything interesting. Nothing to see here. Which is, of course, exactly the point. Because DrB0sch is a series that is very good at looking like nothing right up until it isn't, and the first video is essentially a proof of concept for that. It establishes the format, establishes the character, someone who explores, who doesn't take anything too seriously, who treats the space beyond the map boundary like a playground. It establishes that we are watching someone who found a gap in the wall, and rather than turn back like a normal person, went through it just to see what was on the other side. And then it ends, just like that. See you next time. The second video, Mojave Raw. followed by a string of random characters that I am not going to attempt to read out loud, is where things actually begin to shift. BrB0sch is further out now, deeper into the undeveloped terrain beyond the outpost, and for a good stretch it really is nothing. Cracked roads fading into sand, abandoned houses that have no business existing this far from anywhere, leftover geometry from a version of the world that never got finished, placeholder structures that the developers never went back to fill in, a weird metal structure jutting out from the ground somewhere in the distance that doesn't respond to anything when you walk up to it. And then at around 9.5 minutes in, the radio cuts out. Not fades, it doesn't crackle into static and dies, it just cuts, clean, instant, it's gone. The ambient Mojave soundtrack that has been quietly filling the air this entire time, the thing you stopped consciously registering about 10 minutes ago, just stops. And what replaces it is wind, crickets, footsteps on sand. The specific uncomfortable texture of silence that a place has when everything that was supposed to be in it has been removed and nothing has come to replace it. It is a tiny thing. On paper, it's the smallest thing that has happened so far, and it is the first moment in the entire series where it feels genuinely wrong. But he keeps walking. He finds a campfire in the middle of nowhere, a lunchbox on the ground beside it, some whiskey bottles arranged around the fire. Not scattered randomly, but placed like someone set them there deliberately. Like someone was sitting here not too long ago and just stepped away. He crouches down and interacts with the lunchbox, and the game does something that it absolutely should not do. It adds a quest. M. Johnson over, YEDGSHCH. Quest description, M. Johnson version quest 5. A marker placed somewhere deeper in the out-of-bounds wasteland, in a direction that BrB0sch hasn't been yet. The quest just sits there in the log. He stares at it for a moment, and the video ends without comment. The third video is called Stuck, and it is the one where the trap closes. BrB0sch does the completely rational thing, and he tries to go back, make his way back to the Mojave Outpost entrance, and finds it completely deserted. Not a single NPC anywhere in sight. And discovers that the gap in the invisible barrier he used to get out here has sealed itself. Just a wall now, like it was never open. He tries fast traveling to anywhere else in the map, and the game returns an error every single time. Error void, event in progress. And he tries the radio, but every station is dead. I want to sit with this for a second, because BrB0sch plays it incredibly casually. He just kind of shrugs, looks around for a bit, and starts heading in the direction of the quest marker. And that casualness is doing a lot of work to paper over how horrible this moment actually is. The game let him out in the first place and then closed the door behind him and is now running some kind of event that takes priority over fast travel, over the radio, over the standard operating rules of how New Vegas even works. And there's a quest in a place that shouldn't have quests, pointing somewhere that shouldn't have anything, directing him further in. It's gone at this point from exploring to being directed, in a section of the map that, by all accounts, shouldn't have anything. He finds some items near the outpost ruins that weren't there on his previous visits, and he pockets them without much reaction and heads towards the marker. I mean, what else is he going to do? I mean, if it was me, I'd just all F4, but... The fourth video is Signal, and this is the one where DrB0sch stops being an interesting curiosity and becomes something else. He's moving through the wasteland, periodically scoping the distance with his rifle, when he notices those metal structures from video 2. Except now there are significantly more of them, and they're lined up across the landscape in a way that feels less like random scattering and more like they're tracking his path. As he gets closer, the radio crackles to life with a new station. UVB-68. If that name sounds familiar, it's because it's almost identical to a real thing. UVB-76, nicknamed the Buzzer. A shortwave radio station that has been broadcasting continuously from Russia since the late 1970s. It transmits a repeating buzzing tone 24 hours a day, every day, occasionally interrupted by a voice reading out strings of numbers and names in Russian. Nobody officially knows what it's for, though the most credible theories involve Russian military communications of some kind, and it has never been publicly explained, but it's never stopped. But here's where it gets interesting. The quest name from video 2, M Johnson ver YEDGSHCH. That string of letters at the end, YEDGSHCH, is a documented call sign that has actually been transmitted by UVB-76. It's in the logs. Someone went and found it and put a real Russian military numbers station call sign inside the name of a quest buried in the out-of-bounds section of a Fallout New Vegas mod, and then made you find it by following a campfire in the dark. The other side of the quest name, M. Johnson, is also the vice president of the 8th US President Van Buren, and that link will be a lot more important later, but we'll get back to that. The broadcast BrB0sch picks up on is a completely chaotic mess. Fragments of music, military radio chatter between pilots and ground control, barely audible voices bleeding into each other from multiple directions, like every signal that has ever been transmitted is playing simultaneously from somewhere underneath the sand. Then, in the distance, there's smoke. An actual smoke signal, a barrel burning in the middle of nowhere. And beyond it, another shack. BrB0sch follows it, steps inside. Every sound in the game dies at once. The video ends. Something is out here, and it knows he's looking. The shack is where DrB0sch starts showing its hand, and it does it through inventory items, which is honestly the most Fallout way to do horror that I can possibly imagine. Not a jump scare, not a monster, but a man crouching in a stranger's living room, picking things up, reading their descriptions, and slowly understanding that something has gone very wrong for whoever used to live here. Inside the shack, BrB0sch finds the following: a ham radio sitting on an end table, playing something indecipherable. Voices bleeding through static, nothing you can make out. In the bathroom, a shotgun sitting in a bathtub alongside an empty sponge. Neither can be picked up. The bathroom itself can't be entered. There's a collision wall in the doorway. You can only stand there and look at it. A chemistry station has been fixed to the ceiling upside down, with 2 chairs and a table up there alongside of it. All of it bolted to the wrong surface like someone redecorated during a fever dream. There's a severed finger in a crate, a surgical mask, a camera on a shelf that makes an energy weapon sound when you take photos with it. Which BrB0sch immediately starts doing because, of course he does. And then, underneath a table, there are holotapes and photographs, all of them labeled with the same serial number and model designation. F-84G, as in the F-84G Thunderjet, an American turbojet fighter bomber. It entered service in 1947 and was retired in 1964, and looks almost identical to the aircraft used throughout the Fallout franchise because the whole series is built on that 1950s retro-futurist military aesthetic. The photographs are a pilot's eye view from inside a cockpit, Earth visible through the glass below, somewhere high up looking down at the planet. The audio recording, which a commenter identified, and once you know what it is, you can't unknow it, is radio chatter from the 1989 Gulf of Sidra incident, a territorial dispute in the Mediterranean between Libya and the United States that escalated into an air combat engagement. 2 Libyan aircraft shot down, the US claiming self-defense, Libya claiming unprovoked attack. The recording cuts abruptly mid-transmission, and there is another minute and 13 seconds of silence after the cut. Just silence and the faint hiss of the recording. Picking up the photographs updates the quest. MGV, code yourself smarter. Right, so Van Buren. For anyone who doesn't know, and honestly, could go either way if you're a Fallout fan, Van Buren was the code name for Black Isle Studios' version of Fallout 3, not the Bethesda one with the fucking cannibals and Project Purity Enclave here, the one that never came out. Black Isle were the developers behind the original Fallout and Fallout 2, and in the early 2000s, they were deep into development on a 3rd game, set in the Mojave Desert, featuring a lot of characters and plot threads that would later partially resurface in New Vegas, when Interplay, their parent company, ran out of money and shut them down in 2003. The game was cancelled and the IP eventually got sold to Bethesda, and years later, Obsidian, many of whose developers were ex-Black Isle, made New Vegas, which incorporated pieces of Van Buren's DNA into its story and setting. Van Buren was never released, but the design documents eventually got leaked, and one of the quests detailed in those documents was called Code Yourself Smarter. If your character had low enough intelligence, you could find a computer terminal and use it to literally fix a defect in your own brain and increase your intelligence stat. The developers of New Vegas knew about it, and they left references to it in the game like fossils preserved in a rock. And now, in the space past the map's edge that no player was ever supposed to reach, something is named after it. A quest that shouldn't exist, updating with the name of a quest from a game that never existed. The upside-down furniture, the shotgun in the bathtub, and the empty syringe, the black box from a crashed military aircraft hidden underneath a table, the audio from a real incident where real people died, cutting to nothing, and even the severed finger in the crate. Someone lived here, or was here, or ended up here, and things were not okay for them. The second Mojave Raw video extends outward from the shack and maintains roughly the same ratio of questions to answers as everything before it, which is to say, 0. The UVB-68 signal flicks back to life, and BrB0sch pokes around a broken terminal outside that displays nothing but error messages on every single option, with one exception. One working entry that displays maintenance instructions for a laser rifle and pistol written by someone called JT Bennett, a field operations manual entry from Fallout 3, which has absolutely no reason to be in a terminal in the out-of-bounds section of New Vegas, and yet there it is. Just because we built the bones of it. Then the radio tower complex loads in on the horizon, and BrB0sch stops just for a moment. It's enormous, multiple towers clustered together, a series of derelict buildings at the base, the whole thing sitting completely abandoned in the middle of nowhere, like it was built by someone who needed serious infrastructure for something serious, and then just left. BrB0sch makes his way towards it, and finds, near one of the old buildings, an item simply called remains. Examining it in the Pip-Boy produces an error message, pip OS error 26, file not found. It restores 1 health point when consumed, and BrB0sch eats it without a moment's hesitation. I want this man to be okay, but I don't think he's going to be okay. He tries to get closer to the towers, but invisible walls stop him on every approach. He circles around the entire complex and finds a massive barricade of concrete and rebar and barbed wire at the perimeter, passes through a gap in it, and reaches canyon wreckage, a location that actually exists in real New Vegas, close to the Lone Wolf radio tower, which itself is the subject of one of the more well-known creepypastas attached to the game. The two worlds are almost touching here, the real map and whatever this is, separated by an invisible line BrB0sch can feel, but can't cross. He can't get back in, he's still on the wrong side. And then, buried in the static of UVB-68, there's a scream. Isolated and slowed down, it's been identified as the final radio transmission from Apollo 1. The NASA spacecraft whose command module caught fire on the launch pad during a pre-launch test in January 1967, killing all 3 crew members before the mission had even begun. The transmission lasts about a second in the audio. BrB0sch doesn't react to it, he just keeps moving until he finds a hatch in the ground and climbs down. A crashed aircraft, a military engagement where people died, and the last sounds from a spacecraft burning on a launch pad. There's certainly a list being built here. Every item on it a real disaster, and every person involved didn't survive. The hatch leads down to a bunker, and the bunker is where Dr. BrB0sch starts quietly dismantling Fallout New Vegas lore and replacing it with something that looks almost identical but isn't quite right. Inside, broken computers that don't do anything. A briefcase that ticks ominously when deployed, but doesn't actually explode, and hundreds of casino chips from every establishment on the strip, the Ultralux, the Tops, the Atomic Wrangler even, stacked up in crates like someone was running a counterfeiting operation down here. There's also a terminal with menus that all read null. Every single option, just null, 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 all the way down. Clicking through them anyway, because what else are you going to do? Eventually surfaces some photographs. A real image of the Mojave night sky, stars bright and clear. A real image of the Las Vegas Strip, the Lucky 38 visible, white lines of nuclear warheads arcing across the sky above it. The mountains beyond Vegas with a nuclear explosion half hidden in the lighter tones of the photo. Easy to miss if you're not looking for it. And then an email fragment. Loading it into the console crashes everything. I knew he'd pull something like this. Subject line, truck. Are you sure this is the right truck? The cargo manifest that comes alongside it is, as eagle-eyed viewers in the comments identified, the delivery manifest for the platinum chip. The MacGuffin at the center of New Vegas's entire plot. The thing Benny shoots the courier in the head over at the start of the game. The thing Mr. House has been trying to recover for decades, loaded in Sunnyvale, California, and discharged in Las Vegas. Dated October 23rd, 2077. The day the bombs dropped. The day the delivery never arrived, and the day everything in New Vegas got set in motion. So there's a counterfeit chip operation running out of an underground bunker in the out-of-bounds section of the map, and it was active on the last day the world existed as a functioning place. Make of that what you will. The game doesn't explain it. DrB0sch doesn't explain it, he just pockets the briefcase and climbs back out. Outside the bunker there is a crashed fighter jet half buried in the sand that wasn't there before. There are fish swimming slowly through the air, just drifting past, minding their own business, moving like they're in water that nobody else can see. Reality out here operates on its own terms and kind of has for a while now, and DrB0sch has basically stopped reacting to it, which is its own kind of unsettling. You clock the exact moment in the series where the completely inexplicable stops registering as surprising and instead just kind of becomes like mundane. And then at the end of the video, past all of this, DrB0sch crests a ridge and finds the quest marker. It's a pit, a massive, completely dark, humming pit that drops straight down into nothing. No visible bottom, no light from below, just a hole in the ground that the quest has been pointing towards since a lunchbox triggered it 2 videos ago. And it's the first thing in the entire series that feels actively, physically wrong. In a way that can't be explained away as a leftover asset or an out-of-bounds glitch. Something made this, something put here deliberately, and the quest marker is pointing straight down into the dark. Before DrB0sch goes down though, there's a brief detour. A video posted to the same forum by a different user entirely. Short, inconclusive, filmed from inside the normal map. They notice something beyond the game boundary from the regular playable area. A red glow just over a ridgeline, pulsing softly in the dark. They can't explain it. Neither can DrB0sch, neither can anyone in the comments, neither can I really. And this is, like, kind of one of the most important moments in the series because of what it means. DrB0sch is not alone out there. Whatever exists in the wasteland beyond the boundary isn't unique to his copy of the game. It isn't a personal haunting, isn't something that's happening specifically to him. Another player in their completely normal, unmodified game can see the edges of it from the inside. The glow is real, the towers are real. This isn't a ghost, it seems to be structural, inside the game itself, waiting for anyone who gets close enough to the edge to notice. DrB0sch pockets the briefcase, walks back to the pit, and goes down anyway. At the bottom of the pit, there is a chair, a chessboard, a ham radio, a lantern, and a computer terminal. That's it. Just those 5 things sitting in a carved-out space at the bottom of an impossibly deep hole in the Mojave, lit by a single lantern like someone set up a little waiting room down here, and then left. The radio plays Morse code. Isolated and slowed down, it reads, "This thing's hollow, it goes on forever," and... That's a quote from Arthur C. Clarke's novelization of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The full line is spoken by astronaut David Bowman as he passes through the Stargate monolith, the alien threshold that takes him beyond the known universe into whatever comes after. The complete version goes, "The thing's hollow, it goes on forever, and oh my god, it's full of stars." The series cuts it off before the last part. You don't get the wonder, you just get the hollow and the forever and then nothing. The chessboard is set to a specific position, not a random arrangement, a specific documented one. The final board state of the 1968 chess match between astronaut Frank Poole and the HAL 9000 computer as depicted in Kubrick's film. HAL, playing black, wins, Poole resigns, and shortly after that scene in the movie, HAL kills him. So at the bottom of an impossible pit in the Mojave wasteland, someone has arranged a chess game where the AI won, placed a radio transmitting a truncated quote about entering an alien threshold that strips out all the ore and leaves only the dread, and put a door in the dark at the far end of the room labeled Entrance to Null. BrB0sch sits down at the terminal, clicks through it and finds nothing useful. He then stands up, looks at the door for a moment, and walks through it. This is the first real gear change in the series, the point where the wasteland gives way to something else entirely. The cave system on the other side is near pitch black, claustrophobic, a winding maze of rock with whiskey bottles on the floor every 20 feet or so, and nothing else visible past the weak glow of the Pip-Boy light. The open sky and the radio towers and the crashed jets and all of it, that's behind him now. Whatever is ahead is underground. There's something about caves specifically that does a different kind of work to open spaces. Outside, the fear is more exposure. There's no cover, nowhere to hide, and everything can see you. Caves are the opposite problem. There's no sight lines, no ways to know what's around the next corner until you're already past it. And there's something psychologists apparently call the call of the void. That pull you feel standing at the edge of something dangerous to just keep going anyway. Not because you want something bad to happen, just because some part of your brain needs to know what's at the bottom. BrB0sch has had that since video 1, and whatever is in this cave, he's going to find out. And he keeps going because what else is he going to do? The cave deepens over the next video, Under, and what it contains is, even by the standards of everything that's come before it, quite unnerving. Scaled up gore, enormous rib cages, chunks of meat the size of boulders, the biological remnants of something massive that was killed here at some point and whose remains have become part of the cave itself. Giant stone heads protruding from the rock walls, assets that exist in Fallout 3 at the DrB0sch building and its surrounding area, which is the game's most explicit brush with outright Lovecraftian horror. That has absolutely no reason to be in New Vegas and are therefore immediately, deeply wrong in the way that only a familiar thing in the wrong place can be. Makeshift encampments with bedrolls and bottles, a truck buried in the cave containing hundreds of casino chips, heads on spikes lining a passageway. And then a body, wearing the same outfit as BrB0sch, named Hieronymus B. Here's the thing though, then this is the detail that makes this moment significantly worse once you notice it. BrB0sch's actual in-game character name, visible on his Pip-Boy, is BrB0sch. The game didn't copy his name to create the corpse. The corpse was already named Hieronymus B before BrB0sch ever got there. Whatever is down here didn't name the body after him, it named the body after someone, and then BrB0sch arrived and the names matched. The corpse has been waiting here with his name on it and his clothes in a cave he found by following a quest that appeared from nowhere. And it was always going to be his. In his inventory there was an emergency mask, some ammo, a trader outfit, and a note. Set it up, you will know where. Unknown friends will come to you. The note says that unknown friends will come, and BrB0sch found the body. Maybe that's what that means. Maybe he is the unknown friend. Maybe he's been expected. Now, if you don't know, Hieronymus BrB0sch was a Dutch painter working in the late 1400s and early 1500s, most famous for triptych paintings depicting heaven, earth, and hell in extraordinary and deeply unsettling detail. His hell panels in particular are full of impossible architecture, hybrid creatures, figures being tortured by instruments that look like oversized everyday objects, fires in the background, and a general sense of a world that has completely abandoned any recognizable logic. The Garden of Earthly Delights is the most famous, the right panel being hell specifically. And it looks less like a religious painting and more like someone had a fever dream about industrial machinery and decided to populate it with suffering humans. His name is literally where the word bizarre is thought to derive from. But BrB0sch keeps going. The cave eventually gives way to something even more wrong. A small, sterile, harshly lit room that Obsidian used during development to test dynamic enemy spawning, completely empty of everything except the test geometry, sticking out of the organic cave architecture like a filing error made physical, like someone's internal workspace got left in the wrong folder and nobody noticed. Then a staircase, a door at the bottom. BrB0sch pushes through it, and the screen glitches white, and the video ends. Okay, let's take stock of what's actually happened here, because I think it's easy to get lost in the individual details and miss how methodical this thing has been. BrB0sch found a gap in a hidden wall, and that's it. That's where this started. He found a gap, went through it, and the game, which should have nothing out here, which was never designed to have anything out here, responded. It gave him a quest, it sealed the exit behind him. It even planted a campfire with whiskey bottles arranged around it like someone had just stepped away, pointing him towards a marker in the dark. And then at the bottom of an impossible pit, it put a chessboard set to the position where the AI won, a radio playing a quote about entering a threshold with all the wonder cut out, and a door labeled entrance to null. This is not a glitch. Glitches don't have interior logic. Glitches don't quote 2001 and reference cancelled games and put a corpse in a cave with your name already on it. Whatever is out here was built. Someone constructed this, not hastily, not even randomly, but with the specific intention of it being found by exactly the kind of person who would go through a gap in an invisible wall just to see what was on the other side. The trap, if you want to call it that, was designed for a specific personality type, and BrB0sch walked straight into it because, of course he did, because we would too. The question is what it's trying to say, and I think the corpse is the answer, or the start of one. Hieronymus B was already here, already wearing his clothes, already dead, which means the series is not a haunting in the conventional sense, something following BrB0sch, reacting to his presence, trying to scare him off. It's something more uncomfortable than that. Whatever built this place didn't respond to BrB0sch, it anticipated him. The desert was already mapped, the body was already named, and the quest was already written. He didn't really stumble into anything, he just arrived somewhere that had been waiting for him specifically. Which raises a question the series is going to spend the several next videos not answering. What does it mean that whatever is down here knew he was coming? What does it mean that it knew his name? There's a theme running through horror as a genre about the difference between being hunted and being expected. Being hunted implies agency, something wants you specifically and is coming after you, and it can be fought or fled. Being expected is worse because it means the outcome was already decided. It means whatever is at the bottom of the descent isn't trying to catch you, it's just waiting for your arrival. The corpse named after him in his clothes in a cave he found by following a quest that appeared from nowhere. It's not really a threat, it's more of a prophecy. And prophecies, unlike threats, often can't be outrun. The glitch resolves and BrB0sch is somewhere new. Half his health is gone with no explanation and his equipment is scattered. The way back is a white void that doesn't go anywhere, and forward is a dining room, a completely normal, completely empty dining room with wooden furniture and a rug and a mural on the wall. Every face in the mural has been blacked out, not damaged, not even corrupted, deliberately painted over, every single one, like someone went through and removed all the people from it while leaving everything else intact. Somewhere is the video where DrB0sch puts its actual thesis on the table, and quite literally as it turns out. On the dining table, a steak, a bag of acrylonitrile, a volatile industrial chemical used in plastic manufacturing that causes lung cancer with prolonged exposure, which appears in the entire Fallout franchise exactly once, in a note tucked inside Vault 96, and a book called Trimorphic Protenia, a gnostic text from the Nag Hammadi library, written sometime in the 2nd or 3rd century, and it describes 3 descents by a divine feminine figure called Sophia into the material world to liberate human souls from the prison that was built around them. Consuming it in-game increases BrB0sch's speech stat by 3, because of course it does. We're flagging here for when it becomes relevant later. The compound reappears in a subsequent video alongside bread and wine, a more traditional communion, which heals BrB0sch and cures his addictions. Except this time, the compound visibly tanks his intelligence stat into the negatives, which retroactively raises the question of what exactly the first communion was doing to him, and whether the free speech points were the only thing it gave him. Okay, but before we carry on, Gnosticism. I'm going to explain this, and I promise it is going somewhere. Gnosticism is a religious tradition, or a family of them, it's complicated, don't at me, whose core idea is that the material world is a prison, not a flawed world or a fallen world or a world that just got off to a rough start, a deliberate trap constructed by a lesser god called the DrB0sch, specifically to keep human souls away from actual truth. The real god, the transcendent one, the one that actually knows what's going on, exists completely outside the material world. And the path to reaching it isn't faith or good works or any of the standard options, it's gnosis, which literally just means knowledge. Hidden, secret knowledge about the actual nature of reality. The kind that the DrB0sch would really prefer you didn't find. Real talk, making videos about horror ARGs is genuinely not great for your sleep schedule. You spend enough time staring at corrupted Fallout footage at 2 AM, isolating audio from Russian number stations, reading about gnostic texts at midnight, and your brain just decides it's not going to switch off anymore, like ever. So shout out to today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, because the mask has genuinely helped with that. It's fully adjustable, the headband, the eye cups, all of it. And the eye cups specifically don't press on your lids, which sounds like a small thing until you're woken up from a nap feeling like your eyes have been through something. It blocks everything too. Daylight, monitor glow, the knowledge that there's a David Bowie demo that shouldn't exist. All of it, gone. I'm a proud member of the pro-nap movement, which is a real thing that Manta Sleep runs and not something I made up. And honestly, the mask is the main reason my naps are actually doing something useful rather than just me lying in the dark for 40 minutes, catastrophizing about Van Buren. If you want one, make sure to visit www.mantasleep.uk and use my code NOTSABER for 10% off. Thank you so much. So you've got a fake world built by a lesser god to keep you from the truth. And the only way out is hidden knowledge that someone doesn't want you to have. In a series about a man who pushed past the invisible wall of a video game to find what was underneath it, who found cut content from a cancelled game buried in the out-of-bounds section of the map, who keeps descending through layer after layer of something that looks like a glitch and keeps turning out to be something else entirely. Yeah, Gnosticism is not a random choice. The library terminal BrB0sch finds in the strange looping house he's now apparently trapped in contains 3 texts. The first is the pasteboard mask speech from Moby Dick, Captain Ahab's monologue about the visible world being a facade, a mask made of pasteboard, with something truer and more dangerous moving behind it, and his absolute conviction that he will strike through, whatever the cost. The second is 3 versions of Judas by DrB0sch, a fictional piece of literary criticism arguing that Judas was not a traitor, but the truest and most complete incarnation of God, the one who chose to be eternally remembered as the worst human being who ever lived, so that the redemption story could function. A secret truth so dangerous and so complete that the scholar who discovers it is driven to madness and dies alone and unrecognized. The third is encrypted in ROT13, a basic substitution cipher, the kind you'd use if you wanted something to be findable by anyone willing to put in the minimal effort. And decoded reveals itself to be a passage from the Sophia of the Jesus Christ, a Gnostic text in which a disciple asks Christ directly how to find the truth. And Christ responds by describing a God so utterly beyond human comprehension that no name, no form, no concept, no language can contain or approach him. 3 texts, and I want to be clear that none of this is accidental, because the 3 of them are asking the exact same question just from completely different angles. The pasteboard mask, is the visible world real, or is there something truer behind it, and what does it cost you to find out? 3 versions of Judas, what if the person carrying the most important truth was the one everyone decided was the villain? And the Sophia of the Jesus Christ, what if the thing you're looking for is so far beyond you that no name, no concept, no language you have can even get close to it? Hidden knowledge, the price of searching, the thing that exists outside the system you were given. You know, light reading. Exploring pushes further in and just keeps finding things that really shouldn't be there. A heptagram drawn on the minimap in deep red, which is not something minimaps do. A stockpile of nuclear warheads behind glass in a room BrB0sch can see into but not enter. A console command that, when BrB0sch types it into a terminal, and this is the part that made me actually laugh, produces an immediate explosion. The game physically punished him for trying to cheat his way to an answer, which, honestly fair. A door that opens by itself while BrB0sch is standing 20 feet away from it in an empty room, a bathtub that teleports him somewhere new when he climbs into it because, at this point, the architecture has given up pretending entirely. And then, at the end of a long dark corridor is one of the most unsettling moments in my opinion. Footsteps, fast ones, coming from somewhere behind him, getting louder, getting closer. Whatever is making them, BrB0sch can't see. He runs, and just as the footsteps finally reach him, he gets to a door, and the video ends. Before the next video proper, there's a brief interlude called Intro, and it's one that finally confirms what the series has been building towards since the splash screen's loaded. BrB0sch boots up his copy of New Vegas. The logos that appear are Black Isle Studios and Interplay. Not Bethesda Softworks, not Obsidian Entertainment. Black Isle, the developers who made the original Fallout games, who were deep in development on their own Fallout 3 under the codename Van Buren, who got shut down in 2003 when Interplay went under and took the whole studio with them. The music playing over the title screen is from the Van Buren tech demo, a piece of audio that has no reason to exist in any released product because the game it belongs to was never released. And the New Vegas skyline visible behind the title card, the one that in the actual game is dominated by the Lucky 38 Tower, Mr. House's base of operations, the thing he uses to protect Las Vegas from nuclear bombardment, the building the entire strip revolves around, is missing. The Lucky 38 isn't there. The skyline has a gap where the most important building in the game should be. So, clearly, Interplay never sold and Black Isle never died. They made their own version of Fallout New Vegas, one that carries Van Buren's DNA more directly, set in a Mojave that looks almost right but isn't, in a world where Mr. House never got his tower built, never protected the strip, never positioned himself to be the power behind Las Vegas. A timeline that diverged somewhere before the bombs dropped and has been running parallel to ours ever since, just out of sight, just past the edge of the map. Pod is where the picture gets filled in a little more. The Ultralux casino in abandoned form, empty gaming floors, overturned furniture, the silence that expensive rooms have when the money runs out. And pinned to the wall just outside one of the rooms, barely visible, a newspaper. The headline, House Under Investigation, Robco's Future Uncertain. Adjacent headline, Strange Lights Over Pahrump. Pahrump being a real Nevada town that was cut from New Vegas during development, whose only remaining presence in the actual game files is a single piece of unused graffiti that reads, Avenge Pahrump, a remnant of something that got removed and never fully cleaned up. And just legible, something about the strip itself being under investigation. In this timeline, the house didn't win, he got caught. The TV tropes page for the series, which was put together by people who have gone through the series in forensic detail, notes that the newspaper snippets imply House had his funding cut by a spiteful rival, which prevented him from completing the Lucky 38 and left Las Vegas defenseless when the bombs came. Whatever he was building towards, the self-sufficient Vegas, the launch pad for post-nuclear human civilization, the long game he'd been running since before the war, unraveled before it could happen. The protection never came and the bombs fell on a city that had nobody watching out for it. The quest concludes here, and it concludes in the most deliberately anticlimactic way possible. BrB0sch finds a Visitron, a virtual reality pod from Fallout's wider lore, the immersive simulation technology that shows up in various places from across the series, with a skeletal corpse slowly decomposing inside of it. He takes the briefcase he's been carrying since the underground bunker all the way back in ground, deploys it next to the pod, and the game gives him a quest complete notification. M. Johnson version, YEDGSHCH, complete. No revelation, no answers, no moment where the curtain pulls back and someone explains what any of this was. Just a ticking briefcase next to a skeleton in a VR pod, and an XP pin. The quest that pulled BrB0sch through invisible walls and bottomless pits, and caves full of his own corpses and a library stocked with gnostic texts concludes with the same energy as turning in a fucking fetch quest. The cave he descends into after the Visitron room is full of bodies. Not one or two, dozens piled up and scattered across the floor, all of them wearing BrB0sch's outfit, all of them with the same reddish flayed look to their skin. All of them nameless, no identifier when you hover over them, just bodies. He walks through them without stopping because there's nothing else to do. Salvaged is darker. A void with floating tile platforms and a skeleton NPC standing in the middle of it that does absolutely nothing except watch BrB0sch move. Then the surface again, or a version of it. Destroyed buildings and collapsed structures and radio towers silhouetted against an orange sky. The sounds of distant explosions coming from somewhere BrB0sch can't see. He finds a campsite in the ruins, abandoned, a single corpse lying next to a revolver. The corpse is named Last Men. Singular, not last man, last men. That's Nietzsche. Specifically, thus spoke Zarathustra, which I absolutely had to look up, and you should know that about me. The last man is the figure at the end of history, who has watched everything fall apart and decided the correct response is to want as little as possible. No ambition, no meaning, no risk, just comfort and safety, and the quiet avoidance of anything that might require caring about something. The last man doesn't build, he doesn't strive, he doesn't even try, he just waits, with increasing relief for it to be over. The revolver is next to the body and the orange sky is above it. The explosions are somewhere in the distance, and whatever this person was waiting for, it certainly found them. Nowhere is fragmented, corrupted, cutting between locations fast enough that it's hard to track. Silhouettes standing on canyon walls, watching BrB0sch move through the destruction below. Present for a frame and then gone. Radio signals carrying old American military propaganda, politicians justifying armed conflicts, news anchors reporting on wars, the specific cadence of official language being used to make killing sound almost administrative. Then an image on a wall. The Hell panel from the Garden of Earthly Delights, Hieronymus Bosch's triptych. The right panel, destroyed architecture, fire in the background, figures moving through the dark, instruments of torture repurposed as furniture. The channel has been named after this painting since video 1, and here it finally is, on a wall in the ruins. Next to it, The Son of Man by Marguerite, the one with the man in the bowler hat and the apple floating in front of his face. You know it, and if you know it, you know what it's doing here. The newspaper again, clearer this time. House under investigation, Robco's future uncertain. Strange lights over Pahrump. China annexes Kashmir region, Sandy Valley next. And then, embedded in the corrupted audio, identifiable only by running it through a spectrogram. Howard Hughes, 1947, stepping off an airplane. The real Howard Hughes, who is the explicit real-world model for Robert House, who is the reason House looks like he looks and acts like he acts and ends up alone in a Las Vegas hotel room for decades, documenting the collapse of his own mind. His picture in the noise of a video about a timeline where House failed isn't subtle, but it is effective. The video cuts to darkness, the threat indicator reads danger. Something is in the ruins with DrB0sch, and he cannot see it. He moves to a cliff edge and fires at something in the dark, and the video ends. Nadir, the next video, is not told in order, which at this point in the series is less a stylistic choice and more just the game being honest about what time is doing out here. It comes in fragments, locations you don't recognize yet, events you can't place in sequence. BrB0sch cutting between perspectives mid-video with different ammo counts and different health totals. The footage is clearly out of order, assembled the way you'd reconstruct something from memory if the memory itself was damaged, like dementia or something. By this point, the pretense that normal rules apply has been quietly abandoned, and the editing is just the series admitting it. The word Nadir has two definitions, and the series picked the title knowing both of them. The obvious one is the lowest point, the absolute bottom of something. The other one is astronomical. The Nadir is the point on the celestial sphere directly below the observer, the space underneath everything. Hell, you want to be blunt. So both. What we see assembled from the fragments, a long lantern-lit pathway that keeps appearing and reappearing throughout the video like a reoccurring motif, like a thread being picked back up. The suggestion of a route through all of this, even if the route itself is invisible. BrB0sch navigating a minefield of sea mines, actual naval sea mines, completely inexplicable in the middle of a fucking desert, that ends at a destroyed church. Inside the church, the body of an enormous dead ghoul, scaled up far beyond anything the game normally produces, slumped against the altar like it crawled there and stopped. A canyon section lined wall to wall with cameras, not one or two, but on every surface, every angle covered. Whatever has been happening out here has been watched the entire time, documented, recorded, observed by something that wanted a complete record of BrBosch's descent. Then the ruins of Vegas proper, or this version of it. A partially buried freeside sign sticking up out of the sand. A Saturday advertisement from Big MT, the DLC set in a pre-war research complex where the scientists kept experimenting long after the bombs fell and lost their minds in the process. Which has no business being on a billboard in the Mojave, but it's there anyway. A building covered in hobo code symbols and spray-painted text reading Courier 6, and inside it, a photograph of Robert House and a Securiton brickbat, with the word peace spray-painted across House's face in the same hobo symbols. When you translate those symbols, they read, dishonest man, worth robbing. This is not a safe place. An enormous guitar planted in the ground like a monument, and beside it a mutilated corpse. And next to the corpse sitting in the dirt, a vial of Limit 115. Limit 115 is the name Van Buren used for the new plague, the engineered viral pathogen at the center of that cancelled game's story. In Van Buren, a scientist named Presper had a plan. Release the virus into populated areas, wait for it to spread, then use an orbital bombardment platform to sterilize the infected zones from space. Cleanse the wasteland, remove the problem, and by cleanse, obviously, I mean kill everyone. And by everyone, I mean everyone. The plan was the endgame of Van Buren, the catastrophe the player was racing to prevent. And here, in the ruins of a Vegas that never had House to protect it, there's a vial of it sitting in the dirt next to a body, and next to it, a miniature ICBM, a scale model of this delivery system. Nobody stopped it, there was no player character to stop it, no courier, no one. A small glass box sitting in the rubble contains a tiny figurine of BrBosch, his exact character model, just miniaturized, standing next to a shack in a radio tower. A perfect replica of the beginning of the series, the first shack, the first symbol, the starting point of all of this, reduced to the size of a toy and placed here at the bottom, the Nadir. The Sierra Madre casino glowing in the distance, that structure from the DLC set in a city that the cloud ate, a place where nothing survives and everything keeps moving anyway. A silo walkway descends further down, flanked on both sides by massive stone faces set into the walls, all of them watching. BrBosch walks between them, and at the bottom of the walkway, there's a corpse named username fetch_0. The game just couldn't retrieve the username, or the username is fetch_0, or this is someone who tried to retrieve something, fetch as in a command as in go and get, and this is what happened to them. What's clear is that BrBosch isn't the first person to make it this far down. Someone was here before him, they just didn't come back up. Their body is at the bottom of a silo in the ruins of a city that was destroyed by a plague from a game that never existed. And the only identifying information they left behind is a string of text that might be a name or could even be an error message. The walkway ends in a tunnel filled with red mist and arcing electricity that BrBosch pushes through, and then he's back in the Mojave wasteland. The real one, the familiar one, the actual game. Open skies, sand, the specific color palette of the Mojave at night. And in the distance, against the dark, the Goodsprings water tower. Goodsprings is where New Vegas begins. It's the first thing you see when you wake up after being shot in the head. The water tower is one of the first landmarks, one of the first signs that you're alive and the world is real and there's somewhere to be. BrBosch has spent the entire series going down, and now the Goodsprings water tower is on the horizon. It could mean he's coming back up, it could mean the loop is starting again, or it could mean Goodsprings just another layer. The series doesn't tell you, it just shows you the tower. Right, so before we move on, what the hell is this? Because we're past the point at this point where any of this can be explained by a very dedicated modder with a lot of time and a good eye for atmosphere. The series has been doing something specific, and it's been doing it consistently since the second video, and I think it's worth saying out loud before we go any further. DrB0sch is a series about a version of the world that went wrong. Not our world, a parallel one. A timeline that diverged somewhere before 2012, probably earlier, in which Interplay never sold and Black Isle never died. and Robert House got investigated before he could finish the Lucky 38, and the bombs fell on a Vegas that had nobody watching out for it. The series is set in that timeline. The game DrB0sch is playing is not our Fallout New Vegas. It's a version of it that carries the DNA of a game that never got made, running on a divergence point that we can feel in the architecture but can't quite locate. And here's the thing about that. Every single piece of evidence for the alternate timeline is real. The Van Buren design documents are real. The UVB-76 call signs are real. The Apollo 1 transmission is real. The Gulf of Sidra audio is real. Howard Hughes is real. The series isn't making things up, it's finding things that actually exist and placing them in a context that implies a world where they connect differently. A world where the disasters accumulated differently, where the wrong people won and the wrong things got built, and everything that was supposed to protect people failed before it could. This is where the Gnostic framework starts doing the more heavy lifting. Because the Demiurge, the lesser god who built the material world as a prison, doesn't build the prison out of nothing. It builds it out of real things, familiar things, things that you recognize. The trap is specifically that it looks like the world you know, just slightly off. The Lucky 38 is there, but the skyline is wrong. The music is real, but it's from a timeline you can't access. The quest names are real call signs from a real Russian numbers station. The horror isn't necessarily that the world is fake, it's that the world is almost too real. That the divergence is small enough that you might not notice it until you're already inside it, and the exit is sealed behind you. That's what the alternate universe timeline argument is actually about. Not Fallout lore specifically, although the Fallout lore is doing real work. It's about the specific dread of a world that looks like yours, but just isn't. A world that went differently in ways that are hard to pinpoint, but impossible to ignore once you've seen them. Nadir put DrB0sch at the lowest point of that world, the space directly below everything, where the Limit 115 vial sits in the dirt next to a body and there's no courier to stop what happens next. And what it found there at the bottom of the wrong version of everything was the same thing you find at the bottom of most things if you go far enough. Evidence, records, the proof that something happened here, that people were here, that it mattered to someone, even if it didn't matter to anyone anymore. That's what Nadir was, not just the lowest point of the series, the space underneath the world where all of that failure has been sitting, accumulating, for longer than anyone has been alive to remember it. The Goodsprings water tower at the end isn't really hope, it's the loop. The descent doesn't end at the bottom, it ends where it began, and then it starts again. Because that's what descents do in a world built by something that doesn't want you to find the exit. The next video is called Bank, and it is 13 minutes and 55 seconds long, and is the one that makes the alternative universe argument go from theory to something approaching fact. The content itself is relatively sparse by the standards of what's come before. More corrupted footage, more perspective shifts, more of the desolate cityscape in the Mojave ruins and the looming oversized moon. Ulysses himself standing in a void doorframe in the middle of a storm, present for a moment and then gone with no explanation because fucking course he is. And all the usual furniture of DrB0sch's hell at this point. DrB0sch is wounded, barely holding together, navigating what feels like the aftermath of something violent that happened just off screen. The world is fragmented. The editing is non-linear, cuts between different POVs with different ammo counts telling you the footage is out of sequence and the timeline broken up and reshuffled. And somewhere in the background, barely audible under the corrupted radio signal, there is a song. It's a demo, an unfinished studio recording, rough and incomplete. The kind of thing that exists in an archive somewhere and never makes it to an album. And specifically, it is a David Bowie demo called King of the City. Here is the thing about the King of the City. The demo was recorded in 1972. Its existence was discovered by music archivists in 2013. But the actual recording, the audio itself, what it sounds like, the thing you could press play on and hear, was not made publicly available until 2022. Nobody outside a small circle of archivists had heard it before then. The DrB0sch videos are dated 2012. A Fallout New Vegas ARG from 2012 should not contain audio from a David Bowie recording that nobody heard until 2022. That sentence just doesn't pass. The recording wasn't accessible, it wasn't public. There is no version of this that makes sense if DrB0sch is in our timeline. Because he's not. Whatever copy of Fallout New Vegas he's playing, whatever dimension this forum he's posting to exists in, it diverged from ours somewhere before 2012. And in that divergence, something changed about what cultural artifacts exist and when they became accessible. The Bowie demo is audible evidence of the seam, the point where the two realities separated. The video ends in rubble and the demo fades and he keeps moving because, like, what are you meant to do at this point? The title of this video is 4 blank characters. It's not untitled, not unnamed, just 4 deliberate spaces where a name is meant to be. The absence is the name. Whatever is in here, DrB0sch decided the right way to label it was with a void. And the description reads, this is 1 out of 2. We're at the true home stretch here. The footage is low resolution, corrupted, difficult to follow. The perspective shift, as has come to be fucking customary at this point. The Mojave at night, the ruined city, a crashed plane on a section of gypsum train yard that's somehow in bounds but wrong. Giant cranes in the sky, red train cars on railroad tracks, the landscape reassembled from familiar pieces in an unfamiliar order. And there's a shack, an aerospace laboratory, and a skeleton named Jack P. Jack Parsons was a rocket engineer. He was also, and I genuinely cannot stress this enough, one of the most insane people to ever exist. A member of Aleister Crowley's Thelema movement, a man who ran occult rituals in his Pasadena home between shifts at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He genuinely believed in magic, who may or may not have been trying to create a homunculus when he died in an explosion in his home lab in 1952. His ashes got scattered in the Mojave Desert. Howard Hughes knew him. L. Ron Hubbard, yes, that L. Ron Hubbard, the Scientology one, was also connected to him and widely believed to have had something to do with his death. Now, the slush fund ledger in the Lucky 38 pays out to basically every company in Fallout lore. Repcon, Voltex, the Commonwealth Institute of Technology. And somewhere in that ledger is presumably a thread connecting House to what happened to that lab in Pasadena in 1952. Because next to his skeleton in the aerospace laboratory, there is a letter. Very short, just with love. RH, presumably Robert House. And somewhere in the background, there's another radio broadcast. It takes significant effort to isolate. The source, once found, has barely any views on YouTube. One of those recordings that exists on the internet in the specific way things do when nobody has any reason to find them. It is a 1969 broadcast from WABC Radio, a host named Roby Young, and what he is discussing is the Paul is dead theory. You probably know this one. Paul McCartney apparently died in a car crash in 1966 and got secretly replaced with a lookalike so the Beatles could keep going. Evidence supposedly hidden in the records if you play them backwards. In the album artwork if you know where to look. The whole thing runs on a very specific kind of logic where looking hard enough for something is treated as proof that something is there. Caesar's camp with mass graves in the dirt where the Frumentari used to sleep. The Legion completely wiped out, every tent a burial pit. This is, as I've said before but I want to note again, a series about a man who found a gap in a wall and kept going for 20 videos because something might be on the other side. The acrylonitrile appears again, alongside bread and wine once more. A more traditional communion this time. The bread and wine healing BrB0sch, curing his addictions, restoring his limbs, ringing church bells when consumed. Except the acrylonitrile, which was present at the first communion in somewhere and gave him 3 points of speech, but it now visibly tanks his intelligence stat into the negatives. The first communion did something to him. The series has been waiting until now to show you what exactly. There are also references to Apocalypse Now buried in the audio. Recordings that relate to the psychological horror of war, to men sent into darkness on missions that were never going to end well, to the specific rot that happens to people who go too far in and just can't find the way back. The moral and psychological cost of dissent. The Paul is dead thread pays off in the next video, but the thing worth sitting with now is what it means that it's here at all. BrB0sch is in a game from a timeline that diverged before 2012. The Beatles do exist in his timeline, that is established. And in this timeline, the Paul is dead theory has a different relationship to reality than it does in ours. Because the car crash that supposedly killed McCartney, in the newspapers visible in the Lucky 38, in Catalixi, which is the next video, a headline readable on the wall reads, "Member of the Fab Four in critical condition after a car crash." In our timeline, Paul McCartney did not die in a car crash in 1966. In this timeline, there is a newspaper on a wall that says something otherwise. The thing people lost their minds theorizing about in our world is just a news story in this one, reported, printed and filed. And it's not just Fallout. The divergence goes wider than that. The Beatles exists in this timeline and Paul McCartney apparently died in his car crash, so Everyday Chemistry is a real album. David Bowie recorded a demo in 1972 that someone in 2012 somehow had access to. Whatever split this timeline off from ours happened early enough that the ripples have reached basically everywhere. Music history, Fallout publishing rights, whether Las Vegas survives a nuclear war. BrB0sch is walking through the accumulated wreckage of all of it. The video ends without resolution. It's one of two, the description said, and the second is next. The next video is called Catalyxy, with a C instead of a K. Catalyst is the Greek word for conclusion, dissolution, the end of things, and the title is not hiding what this video is. It begins with a cinematic shot, a spire jutting from the ground, the enormous moon in the background that has been looming over every video since Nadir. The world reduced to silhouette and shadow, then it cuts to gameplay and the descent continues. Rail tunnels, the Sierra Madre hotel rooms, vertical. Graffiti on the wall reading "Let Go." The phrase associated most with Dead Money, the DLC about a city that refuses to release its grip on you, that promises treasure and delivers only the weight of things that you can't put down. More tunnels and more scaffolding. The world becomes more hostile and narrow. And then, in a side room off the main passage, above an offering of elite riot gear, the best armor in the game, left here like a gift, there is a graffiti. It reads, "Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be." Doris Day, a song about asking the future what it holds and getting the same answer every time. Nobody knows. It'll be whatever it'll be. And at some point you have to make your peace with that. And this series, which has spent its entire runtime descending through cut content and cancelled timelines, and things that were lost before anyone got to experience them, ends with that sentiment spray painted on a wall next to the best armor in the game. Left there like a gift. Take what you're given. The video walks through Nipton, in bounds recognizable, but wrong. The giant skeleton on top of a house, radio towers that shouldn't be there. An Anchorage memorial that belongs in Fallout 3, not here, with an oversized Old Glory weapon. Ulysses' weapon, planted in the ground like a monument. The house in Goodsprings comes next. It's full circle. Doc Mitchell's home, the place the game begins, the place you wake up after being shot in the head and left for dead. The place the courier's story starts. BrB0sch found a door inside it that wasn't here before, and it opens into the lantern corridor. The path of lights that has appeared and reappeared through Nadir and Catalyxy, reoccurring like a memory, like something guiding him through. He follows it, and the POV cuts to the lucky 38. Mr. House is waiting. And he has been waiting, the spliced audio tells us, for 990,000 years, not 200, not the timeline of the game we know. The voice is built from vanilla New Vegas record. Actual lines, House says in the base game, cut apart and reassembled until the meaning is completely different. So filthy, please forgive me. A Tartarus bleak unending. It doesn't sound like the confident oligarch who shot down the bombs and kept Vegas lit for 2 centuries. It sounds like something that has been alone in a tower for longer than human civilization has existed, repeating pieces of itself, trying to communicate through the wreckage of a personality that has been eroding since before the fall. BrB0sch delivers the platinum chip, but it is of little use by now. He is taken to space, the Earth visible below. A giant bed sitting in the middle of nothing. And BrB0sch, who has descended through invisible walls and bottomless pits and caves full of his own corpse, who has consumed gnostic texts and military disaster audios and the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch and Francisco Goya, who has been hunted through the ruins of an alternate history by something he could never see. BrB0sch lies down on the bed. And the video cuts out, the game crashes, his PC shuts down. The final frame before the cut, freeze-framed by the community, is the forum, the thread. Users typing in real time while BrB0sch was recording, watching the descent live. And one of them has written, "I'm worried this will be like a kill switch situation and we won't be able to see what else is in there after it poofs out of existence." Someone suggests a live stream and the thread gets behind it immediately. They document it together in real time, because whatever was here might not stay, and if nobody was watching when it disappeared, there'd be no proof it had ever existed at all. The videos we've been watching were never BrB0sch alone. They're edited highlights from a live stream. The whole series was always communal. Someone found something impossible and immediately reached for other people because that's what you do. You need a witness. You need someone else to confirm you're not just seeing things. A bunch of internet strangers in 2012 sitting at their computers in the middle of the night, watching someone descend into something that they couldn't explain, keeping the record because they were afraid it wouldn't keep itself. That's the most human thing in the entire series, and it's the last frame before the crash. Okay, we need to talk about a stop-motion film that took one man 30 years to finish. Phil Tippett is a visual effects guy. You've seen his work. He did the creature effects on the original Star Wars trilogy, Jurassic Park, RoboCop, a bunch of other stuff you definitely know. But in 1987, in between all of that, he started a personal project. No studio, no budget, no deadline, clearly. Just him and a bunch of puppets and 35 years of on and off obsessive labor that finally got released in 2022 under the name Mad God. And if you haven't seen it, I'm going to describe it and you're going to think I'm making it up, but I promise I'm not. Mad God is a stop-motion film about a gas mask soldier who descends into hell with a lantern and a briefcase. There's no dialogue, there's no exposition, just a man going down through increasingly horrible environments. Flesh machines, surgical theaters, creatures doing things to other creatures that I won't describe. And the cycle that never stops. The briefcase contains a bomb, and the bomb is supposed to end the suffering. The soldier, the assassin, is always intercepted before he can set it off. He becomes part of the hell he was sent to destroy. And somewhere above it all sits a figure called the Last Man, sending one assassin after another into the dark, knowing none of them will make it. Tippett said he wanted to bring Hieronymus Bosch's paintings to life with a modern lens. He succeeded in a way that probably should have required a fucking warning label. I'm spending time on this because DrB0sch is, structurally, Mad God in a game engine. The connections aren't subtle, the gas mask, the ticking briefcase, the lantern path, the descent through spaces that get progressively worse and less physically possible. The figure called Last Man sitting with a revolver in an abandoned shack, the corpses in the pits, the cycle that doesn't resolve. Whoever made this series watched Mad God and went, right, I'm doing that but in New Vegas. And honestly, fair enough, absolute top tier taste. But here's where I'm going to go slightly off the rails and you're going to have to trust me for a minute. Whilst Mad God does explain the shape of DrB0sch, it doesn't explain what it's about. For that you have to go back further, back to the library in somewhere, and the stuff Bosch was consuming in that safe room while he was propping his feet up and drinking the stolen vodka. The Sophia of Jesus Christ, the Trimorphic Protenia, the terminal full of null entries that turns out to contain an ROT13 cipher sourced from the Nag Hammadi library. These are all Gnostic texts, and Gnosticism has a very specific idea at its core that I think is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this series without it ever being stated directly. The basic pitch of Gnosticism, and I apologize to any actual Gnostists watching this, I'm absolutely going to butcher your religion for a YouTube video about a fucking Fallout mod, is that the material world is a prison, not a flawed world, not an imperfect world, but a deliberate trap built by a lesser god, the Demiurge, to keep souls away from actual truth and actual knowledge. The real god, the transcendent one, exists outside of it, and gnosis, which just means knowledge, is specifically the hidden kind of knowledge. The kind you're not supposed to have, the kind that's locked behind a wall. The Trimorphic Protenia is about a divine figure who descends into that prison to break people out of it. Not once, but 3 times, because the prison keeps rebuilding itself, because apparently in Gnosticism that's what prisons do. Now take a look at what Bosch is doing. He found a gap in the invisible wall of a game, a wall that developers put there deliberately to keep players away from the unfinished space beyond. And he went through it. And on the other side, he found the prison underneath the Mojave, the fake world inside the real world. Cut content, cancels projects, Van Buren's ghost, the version of everything that never got to exist, the stuff you were not supposed to see. He went through the wall and found the hidden knowledge, and just like the assassin in Mad God, he couldn't come back the same way he went in. Van Buren is where this all lands emotionally. For anyone not deep in Fallout history, it's the codename for Black Isle's version of Fallout 3, we've been over this. The game was almost finished, there was a playable tech demo, and design documents got leaked. And then it just didn't exist anymore. Obsidian, who were mostly ex-Black Isle, folded a lot of it into New Vegas, but the actual game, the one that was almost there, never came out. And DrB0sch is absolutely haunted by it. From the second video onwards, it keeps showing up. Quests named from Van Buren's design docs, items renamed to reflect events from a cancelled timeline, cut content bleeding through the edges of the map like damp through a wall. The Art Deco monolith in the cave, the Apollo laser pistol that was never in the final game, the quest called Code Yourself Smarter. Van Buren is the hidden god in DrB0sch's cosmology, the real truth behind the visible game. The thing that the DrB0sch, the creation engine, Bethesda, the long chain of corporate decisions that killed Black Isle and shaped what Fallout had become, doesn't want you to find. BrB0sch found it anyway, and that's what the whole series is about, really. And then there's House, who I think people are going to overlook in favor of the weird stuff, which would be a mistake. In the actual game, House is the reason Vegas is still standing. He saw the bombs coming and he calculated the trajectories, he shot most of them down. 200 years later, the strip is still lit up because of the one man with enough computing power and enough paranoid foresight got it right when everyone else didn't. He's not a good person, but he's competent in a way that most Fallout characters genuinely aren't. In DrB0sch's timeline, he failed. Got investigated, probably for the Jack Parsons stuff and the slush fund and whatever else was in that ledger. Got taken down before he could finish the defense grid. The bombs hit Vegas, the Lucky 38, which in the real game is basically his monument, his proof of concept, his whole thing, is just a ruin now. And House has been sitting in it for 990,000 years. Not 200, 990,000. According to the spliced audio in Catalyxy, alone. In a purgatory that is specifically the shape of everything he was supposed to prevent. Please forgive me. That is the line that gets me. Every other voice line in the final scene is reassembled from vanilla New Vegas recordings. House talking about Robco, about the Platinum Chip, about the Lucky 38, cut up and reordered until the meaning is completely different. But Please Forgive Me lands differently. Because that's not a powerful man talking, that's something that has been waiting almost a million years for someone to notice it. Still trying to communicate through the wreckage of a personality that's been alone longer than human civilization has existed. BrB0sch then delivers the chip, lays down on the bed, and the game crashes. And the last thing you see freeze-framed is the forum, the Fred, a bunch of internet strangers in 2012 sitting at their computers watching someone descend into something that they couldn't explain. And one of them typing that I'm worried this will be like a kill switch situation and we won't be able to see what else there is after it poofs out of existence. The whole series was a live stream. The videos we've been watching are edited highlights from something that was always meant to be watched together in real time. Because someone found something impossible and immediately needed other people to be there. That's just what you do. You find something you can't explain and you turn to the nearest person and go, "You seeing this?" You need someone to confirm that it's real. The Bowie demo that nobody should have heard in 2012, the Paul is Dead broadcast with 800 views or whatever the fuck. The Apollo 1 screams in the UVB68 static, the Gulf of Sidra audio cutting mid-transmission. Every real disaster in this series is something that happened and was documented and proved to someone that something had gone wrong. The series is built on that, on preserved evidence of catastrophes, on the records that survived when the things they documented didn't. The forum thread at the end is the last entry in that list. Before the window closed, they made a record, and now, annoyingly, so have I. DrB0sch put up a community post a while back saying the story is essentially concluded. 20 videos, whatever it was doing, it's done. Actually, as of recording this, there are some more posts that indicate there might be something more coming, but who fucking knows. There might be more. The post leaves the door open, and knowing the series, the door is probably load-bearing somehow. But as it stands, what we have is a man who found a gap in a wall, went through it against all reasonable advice, descended through 200 hours of someone else's personal hell, delivered a useless chip to a man who's been waiting almost a million years, laid down in a bed in space, and crashed his PC. And somewhere in the wreckage of all of that is a cancelled game that never got to exist, a city that didn't survive, a tower full of regret, and the persistent, insane belief shared by BrB0sch, by the Form, by every person who has ever glitched through an invisible wall in a video game just to see what was on the other side, that the thing you're not supposed to find is the thing most worth finding. I don't know if that's true, it probably isn't most of the time, it's usually just untextured rocks and a floating tree. But every once in a while, go watch it, don't look up anything first. I mean, if you've got this far, then, you know, shut up. Find the gap in the wall yourself. You know you want to. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely different type of video, but I really enjoyed making it, and this ARG is pretty good, honestly. Very long video. I didn't expect this to be so long, and it's been in the pipeline for a while at this point. But yeah, let me know if you want me to cover any more ARG/unfiction/ this type of stuff. I've always wanted to, but I thought like it might be a bit meh to cover it, but I don't know. I want to brain share. We got a lot of the normal content coming, so you know, it's all right. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this. I'd love to know, honestly. I hope I did it justice. I still think there's a lot I missed, themes and stuff wise, and blah 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 blah. If you do have anything to add to my analysis or anything, make sure to leave it down below. I love engagement. That's about it. But as always, I'd like to give thanks to the channel members and the Patreons. That, of course, being Flapjack, 8th Heretic, Vested Voice, Pewter Hailstorm, Will Provine, Rasulki Ryler, Idenios, Keother, Andrew Sherman, Shaddix, Norika, Rieslun, Ellie Kitty, Aroxano, A Brick Wall, Ash Crowing, Crit Croc, My Horror Project, Proxy, Sign Up King, The Radiant Opera, Bearpaw, Ice Bear Ray, and Vibe Cato. Thank you all so much for the support. It truly means the world. If you want your name read out here, let me know by subscribing and stuff. Sorry, I'm so shit. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.